Hey everyone, we are live. This is the finale for the Ad1 Challenge A1C35. And as a part of the finale, we're going to answer a few questions that you submitted to us prior to the finale. And we're going to select the winners of our challenge. So before we get started, I wanted to take a moment and give our panelists and finalists an opportunity to introduce themselves. So today, our polyglot panel includes Paulino Brenner. Paulino, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? My name is Paulino. I'm originally from Argentina. I live in the United States, and I'm a Spanish teacher online. I'm also in person, and I did a few months ago the Language Learning Summit, where I have the opportunity to learn from all kinds of learners and teachers. So I really, and I also participated in the Ad1 Challenge. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Benny?
I'm Benny Lewis. I run Fluent in 3 months, and I worked with Brian Kwong to kind of transfer the Ad1 Challenge over to the Fluent in 3 months community. So I'm very happy to answer anyone's questions today.
All right, and our finalists today, we have 5 total finalists. 2 of them were able to make it with us. They are Arkato, who is our Ad1 Advanced finalist. And then we have Danny, Jonathan, Rashan, and Savita. So with us today, we have Danny and Savita. So in brief, let us know what language you were learning, what the biggest thing you got out of the challenge was, and we'll get to questions in just a moment. So I'm going to go in the order that I see you. So Savita, do you want to go first?
Hello.
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 Yeah, I'm Savita. I'm from India, but presently I'm working in Myanmar. And so because of my work, I needed to learn Burmese more efficiently. So I tried to learn Burmese during this 90-day challenge. And as I mentioned already in my feedback also, I was expecting more sort of group interaction, but there was nobody else speaking Burmese. So that kind of support I did not get. And as I also mentioned earlier, that getting online tools for learning Burmese is a little difficult because of the written script is different. So these were the 2 major challenges for me. Thank you.
Danny?
Hi there, I'm Danny. I'm from England, but I'm learning Spanish. So I've been learning it for a couple of years, but I never really made that much progress because, one, I didn't really practice regularly enough. So I would sort of every couple of weeks or every couple of months really try and then stop. And so I really needed that kind of push and something to keep me going. But I think my other big problem was lack of confidence in actually talking. So I was always in my head, not ready yet. So I needed that thing that was going to make me do it. And I think that's what was great, was that although it was really embarrassing to keep making so many mistakes, it was kind of nice because then I knew everyone else was going through the same thing. So when we were having to do the videos and the conversations online and so on, yeah, they were terrible sometimes, but I just kept thinking I'm not the only one. It's fine. So yeah, I really liked it. It was good. It was good to have a lot of support. And I think I was quite lucky in that there was quite a few Spanish people, well, not Spanish people, but sorry, people learning Spanish who were very supportive of each other. So I kind of found lots of new resources. For example, there's a really good YouTube guy I've been watching, and I think that's really helped me progress quite a lot. So that's been really nice.
Great. So I'm going to open up the floor to you both to ask Paulino and Benny your questions. So any language learning questions you have, feel free to jump in. Danny, I know I saw you posted one in Slack. Do you want to reshare that here?
Yeah, so I think the thing I'd put was that I kind of want to know how to make the most of any online lessons that I do. So should I leave it up to the teacher to just plan the lesson and just to sort of tell me what they want to do? Or should it be more that in advance we determine what we're going to look at so that then I've got a chance to read about the topic or learn some vocabulary? Or should that be the point of the lesson, is that they are going to teach me that? So that's kind of what I never really quite know.
Well, I know, Paulino, you'd have lots of thoughts on this with your teaching experience. So
yes,
do you want to dive in?
I think that we have similar thoughts on this. That I believe that you will have expressed your goals to that tutor, hopefully before, or you have worked with your tutor to establish what your goals are going to be, but you know more than your tutor where you're going to get and how you feel, because you're always sensing your confidence. So I do feel like you should take the initiative, not only because should take the initiative to say, this is what I would like to work on, because you are judging where you feel confidence. And sometimes you might need more work in the past tense, but if you're feeling not very confident with your pronunciation, then you should express that, so at least that is part of the lesson, so you can regain that confidence in a way. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So hopefully you have established some specific goals with your tutor and trust that professional to find materials or resources that are according to your needs, and then you can just come with that. So if you have done that session, then you can leave it more to the tutor to bring those ideas. But I think it's always a good initiative to come with something for the lesson that comes from you, because you will feel more empowered and you will feel more engaged with the lesson when you say, you know, I know that today we're going to work on the past tense because I'm really struggling, but I really want to talk about my experience at the market because I tried to buy this and I didn't understand. So you make a little bit of the time to fulfill your interest and something that maybe happened a couple of days ago. It's fresh in your mind. You can make a very strong connection with that content, and that's going to have a longer lasting effect in your acquisition and your learning because it's fresh. It just happened 2 days ago, or just something you just heard in the podcast. It's very fresh in your mind and you are very interested about it, so you're going to make a deeper connection, and then maybe you can move on to some of the regular stuff that you have been working on, that you're trying to improve. So those are some ideas. Benny, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything, for sure. What were you saying, Danny?
No, I just said that sounds good. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that depending on how confident you are in taking a little bit of control, it's important to not lean back into the dynamic of teacher-student that we would be used to as we grew up, where effectively we sit back and the teacher tells us everything we need to think about. And like for me personally, I found that I do need to guide my teacher a little bit. Not a lot. If I'm guiding them too much, then it's not only straining me because I have to think about the language and how to form words and such, but I also have to guide the lesson. So for me, the best teachers are just naturally guiding the lesson in the right direction, but no one is going to start knowing exactly what they need to teach you. Some teachers, they have pre-made like classes that they like to go through. And I wouldn't necessarily always follow those structures. I mean, maybe with some teachers, it does help to do that. But for me personally, since I want to use the vocabulary that I know I need to work on, or the weaknesses that I have, especially since I've learned other languages, I might find some grammar point very easy, whereas I'll find some other one very hard because I haven't seen that one before. So what I would say is definitely take a little bit of initiative. So if you're starting a class and you know this is not actually something that's a very good use of your time, tell your teacher immediately. If one of my teachers started teaching me, masculine, feminine, and I'd be like, oh, I've dealt with that 1,000 times. Can we do something else, please? And like, if they're not able to adapt to that, then that's unfortunate, but I like to test a few teachers out at the start. And if I find someone who is able to adapt and who is good at seeing what I truly need to learn and like taking us in that direction, rather than just following a basic structure that effectively I could get the same use out of watching YouTube videos, and I need to interact with the person. It needs to be special for me. But if they're just teaching at me, then like, that's what you have to ask yourself. Could I get the same kind of value out of a YouTube video? If so, you probably need a different teacher. And that's kind of how I think of it. And I always try to be critical, because if you have a teacher, you're paying them for the service. So you do want to make sure you're getting value for your money.
Yeah, I mean, the teacher I've been using has been great. She's been really lovely. And she in our first sort of lesson, it was very much her sort of identifying things to work on just by general conversation and divide the past. We need to work on the past. So so that's what I've been revising in my own time. But then each week we spend pretty much the whole hour just talking through my week, talking through what we've done, which is really good because then I get to practice using the past tense. So that's kind of the format for our lesson as such. So it's not really that she's necessarily teaching me, but it's giving me that opportunity to talk through. I don't know. Do you think that's good?
Yeah, and that's what you want. That's great. Like for me, the most ideal teacher is a language facilitator. They set the scene so you can do as much talking as possible, and that to me is a really good teacher. So that sounds like you've got a good setup there.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to speak English, so.
Oh yeah, perfect.
All right, before I turn it over to Savita for a question, we actually had a similar question coming from Heather, and she's asking if anyone has any experience with attending a language school and what their thoughts are on attending a language school when traveling to a country with your target language. Like, what would your advice or wisdom be regarding that?
For me personally, I haven't had the best experiences at language schools, especially in the country, because I find the variation of people attending the school tends to be too many different levels. Whereas if I attend a school at home, I'll actually find there'll be enough students sometimes that I'll have the particular level that I need. But this for me, I've never found group classes to help me immensely in my language learning projects. So whether they're at home or in the other country, my personality is I need to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody. But I know that I've heard a lot of success stories of people who have attended language schools and who've gone abroad to attend a language school. I think you don't need to go abroad to attend a language school. You go abroad because you're going to try and interact with people while you're in that country. And I would personally not really recommend going abroad for that reason. I would attend a language school if you know that's going to help you at home, and make your focus just that language school so that when you go to the country, you can focus on the many, many other things that you have to deal with from life abroad. And that can be where your energy goes. What do you think, Paulino?
Yeah, I work with a lot of adults, and we do as much as we can here, but obviously many of them are learning to travel abroad, and they say, oh, while I'm there, should I go to a school? And in my experience, it's been really hard to find, you might find two people who went to the same school, and one had a great experience and one had an awful experience, because it's all very personal. You're outside of really outside of your comfort zone, away from home. My advice would be try to find, like Benny says, a school or something you can do at home that you maybe more at your level, but then think of your interest and passions and find a school that is more experiential, that is going to stretch your language in the area of your passion. So for example, I'm from Argentina, and a few of my students are learning Spanish with me because they love learning tango. So when they when they travel to Argentina, they don't go to a language school, they go to a tango language school. So they are there to learn more, they develop their tango skills using their language skills they started acquiring here. Their language skills will continue to improve there, but they're kind of doing 2 for 1. So it's more about the experience. And if we're talking about resources in at home, whatever at home is, right now at home for me is the United States. I came to the United States to work at Concordia Language Villages, an immersion camp that has programs for children and adults that does all kind of activities to immerse you in the language with trained teachers. So teachers who are trained for immersion methodology, which is not the same as I jump into a city, I'm immersed, and I'm going to learn a lot. That's not going to happen unless you have some experience with it. So here the teachers are trained for it. So so that's something to consider, that immersion is not just jumping into a city and I'm going to be surrounded. The teachers have to be trained to help you with that. So there are resources like that all over the world that are closer to home than traveling. So find something that you like to do and find a school that will help you with that. I see a lot of schools coming up. combining language tourism or linguistic tourism type of thing. So you go and you learn about the culture or the architecture or the food or a place in the language. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Should we go on to the next question, do you think?
Yes, Savita, do you have a question for Benny or Paulina?
Yeah, I have actually two different questions. One is, all of you have learned many languages. What happens when you learn and then you actually don't use it? I'm in Myanmar, but now I will be leaving Myanmar and going back to India. So after 2-3 years or 5 years down the line, if I have to pick up again speaking Myanmar, will I be able to, like swimming or bicycling, will it come automatically, or I have to again keep doing these things? And the second question is, especially when we are working, I mean, I haven't come here as a tourist. So if I go to another country, I will again go for work. So I will need to read documents and I will need to write. So how much do you focus between speaking, listening, and reading, writing? What kind of time slot should be dedicated to this of different skills either? But reading and listening, we are focusing more in A1C. But what about writing and reading? I mean, speaking and listening, we are focusing here. What about reading and writing?
Yeah. Okay. Well, two very complex questions. So let me see if I can get through them. If I remember the question as well as I can. So the first question on how do you make sure you can keep the same kind of level of the language if you learn other languages or if you spend a few years not speaking the language you had learned. And I can tell you from experience that once I've reached a kind of low level in a language, if I then spend a few years not speaking it, it's not exactly the same as starting it over from scratch, but it's quite similar to. Like I can't. There are many language projects I've had, and if someone came up to me and tried to have a basic conversation, I just wouldn't be able to do it because the level I reached was at basic conversation level, but it was so long ago, and I've forgotten a lot of it. But what the difference is if you're working on it long enough that you get to a solid intermediate level, then I think that changes how the language is in your brain in some form. So even if you take a long break from it, so I have taken long breaks from a lot of languages, like Esperanto, Irish, and even my better languages, Spanish and French. I might not speak it for a very long period, but I can get right back into it because I've gotten it up to this certain level. And it's kind of like, the longer you're away from it, you imagine you've worked up your level to this amount, then it starts kind of dipping down slightly. So if you're away for a year, but you got it to a really advanced level, then it goes maybe down to upper intermediate. And that's kind of the way I think of it. Like there's no mathematical equation to express that, but it's more or less how it works. And the way you can help yourself to work around that is instead of waiting 3 years to use the language again, if you are as often as possible trying to get some kind of practice. So it doesn't have to be the same level of intensity that you're doing during an Ad1 challenge, but even just reading an article and listening to a podcast or taking a language lesson once a month, whatever you can do, this will at least maintain it at that level. You won't necessarily zoom up to the next level, but you'll stay at the level that you work so hard to get to. So that's my thoughts on that. And then on your, Paulina, do you want to go ahead and give your thoughts on that?
So you're mentioning continuing the input, right? Getting a lot of reading and a lot of writing. And people forget that if your goal is to be able to keep using the language, and you don't, like you mentioned, oh, I didn't find any partners, just talk to your hand or talk to the door, walk around and narrate what you're doing. So I know it's hard for some of the languages to find those partners. So, and it's fine. It's also hard to find sustainable structures in your daily life, right, for that practice. So use what you have. If you have to clean the dishes every day, while doing the dishes, describe what you see, or in your mind, make up a story and say it out loud. Even for those 2 or 3 minutes, you'll keep activating those structures and vocabulary that you acquired that you can produce spontaneously and keep them alive. So at least what you have acquired or you have gained from your experience, it's staying alive. Ha ha. I can sing on Google because Google is gonna kick us out, but stay alive with the language.
Yeah. Very good answer there. And then going into your second question about reading and writing compared to speaking, especially in your case, if your focus is more professional, something that I found for myself is, and the Ad1 Challenge is indeed going to mostly be about speaking the language. And I think that is a bigger challenge a lot of people face. It's why we try to centralize around it. But after that, what I've personally found to help me get to a more professional level and to work on my reading and writing is to make it more formal. And it's kind of like the reverse of what I feel a lot of people do. I feel too many people try to look at the grammar and the formal courses at the very start, and it's why they never end up getting anywhere, because it's just too intimidating. Whereas once you have enough momentum speaking, then you start getting into these courses, and the structure of a lot of courses is actually what we need. The structure of traditional lessons, and something I've especially found useful is the structure of examinations. So for any European language, if you're doing the European Common Framework equivalent exam, that's how I personally really pushed myself to have an excellent writing and reading skills, and even my fine-tuning the most difficult aspects of the grammar of the language is just having an exam and preparing for that exam. And I've gotten these certificates, even though I didn't need the certificates for professional reasons. Just by sitting the exam, I was forcing myself, because I think when we're speaking, there's because it's more of a personal thing and you're talking, it's less of an examination process. So you feel yourself improving, but you can't really gauge exactly how good you are. And that's fine. I think there's a lot you can do with conversation. You can you can say a lot with very few words, as it were, and it depends on confidence. Whereas when it comes to reading and writing, that is much more technical. And that's why I think academic aspects. So if you can find an exam that you could potentially sit that would just kind of demonstrate your abilities in the language, I would have that to work towards. And I would work with a teacher experienced in that exam, because I've improved my Spanish and French and so on the best, not just with really good teachers, but with teachers who are getting me ready to pass the C2 exam of that language.
Yeah, and on a more informal level, you're talking about for your professional, right? So you will have some demands that are different. And while the exam will prepare for that rigorous study of the structure, also don't overlook your specific needs. The exam might not talk about the specific technical vocabulary of your profession. So make sure that at the same time you are acquiring those structures and vocabulary that you will definitely need to write about. And I would say for everybody else who's looking for a more informal way, the power of journaling, I think it's great. So journal, reflect on what you're doing in the language, the stuff that you were doing earlier while washing the dishes and staying alive, write it down in the afternoon and try to remember what the story that you made up in your head.
Yeah. Thank you for the tips.
All right, I'm going to jump in here with a question from Ernest, who is one of our previous challengers. He asks, what do you recommend for participants to do in between challenges? How much time should one take off between challenges, if any?
Do you want to dive into this first, Paulino?
Okay, sure. I participate in a couple of challenges. I would say one of the great things about the challenge that they give you lots of different tools. They give you the community, they give you the structure, resources. So once you are in between, you know of those tools. So take maybe one of those tools that have worked the best for you and try to keep that to a certain extent. So if it really worked for you to talk to a member of the community and maybe just exchange messages or do a little Skype session, then take one. you can't do everything because you don't have the full structure, right? Maybe you can, but I would say take one tool and use that. Maybe the tool you take with you is that you're gonna have the consistency, and every day for 15 minutes, maybe you scale back a little bit on time, it depends on your goals. But just instead of trying to find something new, you're already being exposed and have experience with lots of tools. Take the one that works the best for you and make it sustainable. Maybe you scale it back a little bit, but you can keep doing it regularly to keep improving or to keep sustaining what you have gained. That's my advice.
Yeah, excellent advice. And I would only add that maybe, especially if you've done multiple Ad1 challenges, then you're obviously experimenting in the challenge itself with different resources and so on. But maybe since you know this is going to be such a long-term thing, you might actually want to start experimenting in the between projects aspect. And like what I've found, since obviously I've done loads of my 3-month intensive projects, I found that maybe in between one project and the next, I tried just completely taking a break, like not even thinking about language learning. And that was a bad idea because I lost momentum, and it was kind of like starting all over again, regardless of whether it was a new language or a language I already knew. I tried going directly from one project immediately into another with no break. But then I felt I was just so burnt out from the first project that the second project was kind of a waste of time. So I've experimented, and I found that I do need like a weekend or a week of like giving myself a break and doing something completely different, going on a beach or whatever. And then after that, I get gradually back in for the first week, and then I get my momentum up. And this is not necessarily what I'd advise other people to do, but if you are doing so many challenges, you might want to like actually plan to test what works best for you to maintain your level between the challenges, or to make sure you don't lose your momentum, and to test those between periods till you find what is best for you in the long term.
All right, I'm going to open it back up to you, Danny and Savita, if you have any other questions for Benny and Paulina.
One quick question for Benny actually is, I've been using your Spanish book that you've done, and I've almost finished it. I was just wondering, are you likely to do another book, kind of like extending it, sort of like as in like the next level up?
So the goal when I was writing Language Hacking Spanish was really to like not necessarily follow, for instance, the European Common Framework of like this is going to be A1 and then potentially someday there'll be an A2 or a B1 or something. For me, this was just about getting people started to speak their language. And if we've achieved that with this book, then everything about it, since it was made with Teach Yourself, a lot of the things that we did incorporate into the book was to make sure that the Teach Yourself complete courses were a natural evolution that would come from this, because then you could take the momentum that you've got from speaking and start putting more structure on it, because we do have a very Pareto principle approach in this book of trying to not overload people by teaching too many things. But I personally don't plan to make Language Hacking Spanish 2. I would say that your best bet is to go to the complete course after this one, because then you've got your initial momentum speaking. But yeah, my plans are like, I feel my talents are usually helping people to kick off their language learning projects. And I know a lot of other people are much better at like, you know, polishing the edges, getting people up to the next level. And I accept that that's something I don't have as much of an interest in. So that's why I'm kind of sticking with the initial levels myself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Benny or Paulina, do you have any final words of advice or encouragement for our finalists?
Well, congratulations, not only to the finalists, but everyone who participated. I think that for many of us who are learning a language by ourselves, motivation and finding the structure and finding a community, it's a challenge on itself. So this challenge, it's helping with that challenge. A lot of challenges here together. So congratulations on taking that initiative, and I hope that you have benefited a lot from that experience. one of the things that I gained the most, not just linguistically with the challenge, but it was about personally and learning about my strength as a learner, as a language learner, but a learner in general, because you know, managing my time. I learned about how good or bad I am managing my time. So I think these are all tools that will be very beneficial, not only as a language learner, but in general, as in the professional field for sure, because we have a lot of those constraints. We have to learn very quickly something else. So now we have more tools of how can I space that out or plan it to learn. So congratulations on being part of this community and contributing and helping others as well. And I hope that, you know, take a break if you need to, but I hope that this is also part of a seed that will continue helping you achieving higher goals or different goals in your language learning journey.
Very well said. Very well said. I guess my final words would be that I know when we start our language learning projects, we have certain things that we're aspiring to, and I can guarantee you that by the end of the project, you will feel disappointment. And like this whole community is about encouraging people, but realistically, you will be disappointed because you won't have achieved everything you wanted to achieve. And I can tell you from 15 years of having constant language projects, I've never had a project where I'm like, I have ticked every single box I plan to tick at the start of my mission. And do you know what? I'm actually better than I thought I was going to be. I've always felt disappointed in myself in some aspect. And that is part of the process. So if anyone watching this has had their project and they're looking back on it and they're thinking, yeah, I did good, but you know, I really could have done better. That's fine. That's how we all feel at the end of these projects. And you should take pride in what you have achieved. So I'm not kind of thinking, wow, all my missions were a failure then. I do look back on them with pride. I do look back thinking, look at all the things that I achieved, but also accepting that this level of perfectionism, I'm never going to reach the ideal that I want in a project. And that's okay. So never be too disappointed in yourself, because like we know we can keep learning, and we know we've made so much progress. And that's kind of what this is all been about. When you show a before and after of people's levels, then even though you can see all the things all the mistakes you're making, from the outside perspective, you have achieved so much, and you should really be proud of that.
All right, so our winner today is going to receive $250 in italki credits and admission to their next Ad1 challenge. And in Ad1 Advance, our winner is going to receive 6 months of Link plus admission to their next Ad1 challenge. So since our Ad1 Advance winner is not here, I'm just going to go ahead and announce that it was Arcado. She studied Korean in Ad1 Advance, and she is our winner for Ad1 Advance. So she'll be getting that 6 months of Link as well as admission to her next Ad1 challenge. So now the winner of the Ad1 challenge is Danny.
Danny! Congratulations!
Congratulations, Danny.
How do you feel?
Shocked. Really?
Yeah, I mean, so we were impressed with the hard work that absolutely everybody put into the project. And it's always very difficult to decide who's going to be the winner, because it's based on a lot of criteria. It's not necessarily just who we feel has the most impressive final video or something like this. There's like many different criteria of how the work you're putting into the project, how you're contributing to the community, how you dealt with the challenges that come up, and we expect challenges to come up. And so I just want to reiterate that Savita and also Jonathan and Roshan, we were very much impressed with what you guys did, and you should be very proud of what you achieved. And with Danny, we just saw a couple of criteria that kind of made us see that she followed the Ad1 challenge spirit to a certain extent, that we wanted to give her the extra kudos.
Oh, thank you.
All right, and I just want to reiterate that it's been an absolute pleasure getting to learn with all of you as a part of the Ad1 challenge. I've really enjoyed watching all of your progress. It's just really inspiring to get to learn learn with you and see what you're doing and see how you're working through those challenges that you're facing as you're working on your languages. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just want to take a minute to thank both Benny and Paulino for joining us and for spending time answering your questions and sharing their thoughts. And I want to ask each of you to kind of share where everyone can find you online for more information. So Paulino, do you want to go first?
Sure, paulinobrenner.com. Easy.
How do you spell Brenner?
Brenner, yes, Brenner, B-R-E-N-E-R, only one N. And Paulino is like Paul with I and O at the end. So paulinobrenner.com, that's kind of where I gather all the kind of things that I do. And then from there, you'll find me on social media.
All right, Benny?
Yep. And for me, fluent3months.com, you'll find all of the articles I've written there. But otherwise, I tend to update my Instagram pretty regularly, and that's Irish Polyglot. So you can find all my fun stuff that I'm up to over there.
All right, and if you're watching and you too would like to have a 15-minute conversation in your new language, you can visit Add One Challenge, that's the number one, add1challenge.com to find out how you too can have a 15-minute conversation in 90 days. So thank you so much for everyone for watching. Thank you again to our finalists, and thank you to our panelists. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.